I remember the exact week it happened. I had just stepped into a new role, new responsibilities, a new team looking at me differently than they had the week before. And for the first 2 weeks, I felt unstoppable. Then, one afternoon, one of my best people sat down with me and said something I never forgot. "I don't know what you want from me anymore." I remember thinking, "What do you mean? I haven't changed. I'm still the same person." But that was exactly the problem. I hadn't changed, and I needed to. Over the last 12 years, I've had the privilege of working with teams all over the world. Small teams of 5 people. Large teams spread across 4 countries. I've led alongside colleagues in Colombia, in Peru, worked closely with clients based in the United States, and collaborated for years with teammates in Egypt, in India, and in the Philippines. And if there's one thing all of that taught me, across every culture, every time zone, every language, it's this. Most people don't fail as leaders because they lack talent. They fail because nobody ever tells them a simple truth. Stepping into a leadership role doesn't just change your title. It changes the entire job. Today, I want to walk you through 7 mindset shifts, not tactics, not a checklist, shifts in how you think before you ever open your mouth to lead someone. Because I promise you, at least one of these is going to feel uncomfortably familiar. Let's begin. Stop solving problems. Start developing problem solvers. When you were an individual contributor, whatever that role looked like for you, your value was simple to measure. A problem showed up. You solved it. Everyone was happy. That was the job. So naturally, when you move into a leadership role, that instinct doesn't disappear. Someone comes to you with a problem, and your brain immediately starts solving it. It feels good. It feels productive. But here's the trap. Every time you solve a problem for someone on your team, you're not just helping them. You're quietly teaching them something else. You're teaching them, don't think. Just come to me. I remember working with an operations manager in Colombia. Brilliant, incredibly capable, early in a new line of business. He used to message me 5, 6 times a day. Every time I gave him the answers, I felt useful. I felt like a good leader. 3 years working for other project, he told me something that stayed with me. I feel like I've stopped growing since this project started. That hit me hard because he was right. I hadn't been developing him. I had been replacing him, thinking with mine, one small decision at a time. So I changed one habit, just one. The next time someone brought me a problem, instead of answering, I asked, "What have you already considered?" That's it. That one question changes everything because it shifts the ownership of the problem back to where it belongs. Your job is no longer to be the smartest person solving problems in the room. Your job is to build a team full of people who don't need you in the room to solve them. Your value is no longer productivity. It's multiplication. Here's a question I ask every new leader I coach. How do you know if you had a good day? Most of them answer the same way I used to. I got a lot done. I cleared my task list. I finished the deliverable. And I understand why. For years, that's how you were trained to measure yourself. People in individual roles create value through their own output. Leaders create value through other people's output. Let me say that differently because it matters. If you spend an hour finishing a task yourself, you produce 1 hour of value. But if you spend that same hour teaching someone on your team how to do that task, you haven't just produced value once, you've multiplied it. Because now, every future task they complete carries a piece of that hour with it. I saw this clearly the first time I worked closely with a colleague. She had a habit. Every single week, she'd block time, not to finish her own work faster, but to walk a junior teammate through exactly how she approached a problem. On the surface, it looked like she was less productive that week. In reality, she was building a team that could run without her. This is the shift almost nobody explains clearly. The moment you become a leader, your time should start filling up with things that don't look productive in the traditional sense. Coaching conversations, removing obstacles, asking better questions. They don't feel like doing work, but they are the highest leverage work you will ever do. Multiplication, not productivity. That's the new scoreboard. Stop giving answers. Start asking questions. This one sounds similar to the first shift, but it goes deeper. This isn't just about problem solving anymore. It's about how you show up in every conversation. Early in my leadership journey, I thought my job was to be the person with the answers. That's what made me valuable, right? That's what earned me the role in the first place. So in every meeting, I talked a lot. Then, one day, a mentor of mine, someone I deeply respected, sat in on one of my meetings. Afterward, he asked me one question that I still think about today. Did you notice you were the only one really talking in there? I hadn't noticed. That was the problem. I went back and reviewed my last 10 one-on-ones in my head, and I realized I was answering questions people hadn't even fully asked yet. I was finishing their sentences. I was, without meaning to, telling my team, your thinking isn't as important as mine. I noticed this pattern, especially working with American clients early in my career. I used to walk into calls ready, with every answer prepared in advance, trying to prove competence. It took me years to realize the strongest conversations weren't the ones where I had every answer. They were the ones where I asked the right question and let the client think out loud with me. So I tried something different. In my next meeting, when someone raised an issue, instead of jumping in, I simply asked, "What do you think we should do?" And then I stayed quiet, even when the silence felt long, even when it felt uncomfortable. That silence is where leadership actually happens. Because in that silence, people start thinking for themselves again. Questions like, "What's your read on this? What would you try first? What's stopping you?" These aren't just polite phrases. They are how you rebuild a team's ability to think, one conversation at a time. Your calendar is now your strategy. I want you to picture your calendar right now. Actually picture it. Back-to-back calls. Little colored blocks stacked on top of each other. Barely any white space. Now, here's the uncomfortable question. If someone looked at your calendar for the past 2 weeks, could they tell what your priorities actually are? Or would it just look like a list of reactions? Calls you were pulled into, fires you were putting out, requests you couldn't say no to. Because here's the truth. Your calendar isn't just a schedule. It's a mirror. It shows, in brutal honesty, what you actually value, not what you say you value. Early on, working across time zones with a team in Cairo, I learned this the hard way. I told everyone that developing my people was my top priority. But when I actually looked at my week, there wasn't a single recurring one-on-one with any of them. Not one. Every slot had been eaten by something more urgent. I wasn't lying to my team. I was lying to myself. So ask yourself honestly, is your calendar full because you're leading or because you're reacting? Leadership isn't measured by how busy you are. It's measured by whether your time reflects what actually matters. If developing people matters, it needs a slot on the calendar. If thinking strategically matters, it needs protected, undisturbed time. Because whatever doesn't get scheduled quietly disappears. Stop managing tasks. Start managing energy. This is the shift almost nobody talks about. And it might be the most important one on this list. Early in my career, I managed like a project tracker. Deadlines, deliverables, checklists. Is the task done? yes or no. And for a while, it worked. The numbers looked fine. But underneath those numbers, something was quietly breaking. I remember one of my strongest performers, based in Peru, someone who never missed a deadline, never complained, telling me almost casually that she was thinking about stepping away from the project. I was stunned. Her metrics were perfect. On paper, everything looked great. But I had never once asked her how she was doing. Not really. I had managed her tasks beautifully and completely ignored her energy. Burnout doesn't usually announce itself. It doesn't show up as a missed deadline. It shows up as silence, as someone who stops raising their hand, as someone who used to bring ideas to every call and now just nods along. So I started asking a different kind of question. Not just, where are we on this? But, how are you feeling about your workload right now? Honestly? What's energizing you lately? What's draining you? Tasks tell you if the work is getting done. Energy tells you if it's sustainable. And a team that hits every deadline this quarter while quietly burning out isn't a healthy team. It's a team on a delay. Feedback is no longer optional. It's your job. I want to be honest with you about something. For a long time, I avoided giving hard feedback. Not because I didn't care, because I cared too much about being liked. I told myself stories to justify it. They already know. It's not the right time. I don't want to discourage them. But avoiding feedback isn't kindness. It's a quiet form of abandonment. Because somewhere out there, right now, there's a talented person who has no idea they have a blind spot that's holding them back. And the only person who could tell them is choosing not to. I think about one teammate I worked with in India, sharp, hardworking, who kept getting passed over for bigger responsibilities. He didn't understand why. And honestly, neither did I at first, because I had never once told him how his communication style was landing with the rest of the team. When we finally had that conversation, a real one, specific and honest, his first reaction was surprise. Then, a few days later, he told me it was the most useful conversation he'd had in years. That's what feedback actually is. Not criticism, not a formality. It's the fastest form of respect you can give someone. Regular one-on-ones. Honest, specific observations. A real investment in someone's development. This isn't a nice to have anymore. Once you're a leader, this is the job. Your success is measured by the leaders you create. This is the shift that changes everything else on this list. I stopped counting what I achieved. I started counting who I helped become capable of achieving it without me. Think about that for a second. Not, how many projects did I deliver? But, how many people on my team could now do my job if they had to? That's an uncomfortable question. It exposes leaders who've been quietly making themselves the bottleneck. The ones who keep control instead of building capability, because being needed feels safer than being replaceable. But real leadership isn't about being irreplaceable. It's about making yourself, eventually, unnecessary. So let's bring this together. Stop solving problems. Start developing problem solvers. Stop measuring productivity. Start measuring multiplication. Stop giving answers. Start asking questions. Protect your calendar like it's your strategy, because it is. Manage energy, not just tasks. Give feedback like it's your job, because it is. And measure your success by the leaders you leave behind you. One day, your team shouldn't need you anymore. And that's not failure, that's leadership.